Hi friends, Father Carey here, and this is another Holy Spirit moment, this one with some recommendations of Christian-themed movies. Now wait a minute, I know that some of you may be tempted to switch me off immediately you heard the expression Christian-themed movies. And I get it. I don't blame you, because there are so many absolutely horrible Christian-themed movies out there. I'm thinking in particular, for example, of the Left Behind series a few years ago, or the more recent God Isn't Dead series of films. These are horrible films because what they try to be is apologetics. They're trying to convert people, or they're speaking to an exclusively Christian crowd. That makes for a bad movie. Good Christian-themed movies don't just speak to Christians, and they certainly aren't in the business of trying to convert. Instead, what they do is use Christian idiom or Christian language or Christian plots to offer an exploration of human universal themes. All human beings, at one time or another in their lives, wrestle with death and suffering and meaning and deprivation or joy, grace. And the best of the Christian-themed movies recognize that. And so in their own ways try to feed us in our desire to learn more about these universal human experiences. So in this first of 3 episodes, what I would like to do is to recommend to you not the schlock that frequently passes for Christian-themed movies, but genuinely soul-feeding movies. And since the latest Christian-themed movie to come out was Conclave, dealing with priests, I thought it might be fun to begin this series with 5 movies that likewise focus upon priests. By the way, I reviewed Conclave about a year ago when it first came out. If you would like to read my review, you can visit my Substack page at this address. So, the first really good Christian-themed movie that I would like to suggest you should take a look at, if you haven't already, came out in 1951. It was written and directed by Besson. It is The Diary of a Country Priest, a cinematic version of the earlier novel by the same title by Georges Bernanos. It is a masterful film. It focuses upon the life of a French provincial priest who is confronted daily with either the indifference or the hostility of the people in his parish, and it's a quite large parish extending over many miles, but also is confronted with what appears to be the coldness of the institutionalized church. How is he, a man who is dedicated to God and to serving others and to serving in the church, to navigate between the hard rock of parish indifference and the hard rock of an institution which seems to likewise be indifferent to the salvation of people? The actor who plays the country priest is Claude Ledoux, and he has a haunted quality to his acting that I think perfectly captures first the despair of the main character in this particular movie, but finally also the redemption of him. Second movie that I would like to recommend to you is by one of my favorite directors, if not my very favorite director, Ingmar Bergman. It is Winter Light. It came out in 1963. It's actually one part of a religious trilogy of films that Bergman produced, wrote, directed. Winter Light focuses upon what appears to be a crisis of faith in a Scandinavian priest. It is set in winter. There is snow and ice in every landscape that is portrayed in the film, and that is a perfect setting for the iciness that overtakes the soul of this particular priest, who is wonderfully played by Gunnar Bjornstrand, who's one of Bergman's acting cast that he uses in many of his movies. The priest seems to have lost his faith because he is tortured by what he considers to be the silence of God. And that silence of God so freezes his soul that he has trouble in an interpersonal relationship that is a primary theme of the movie, but also has great difficulty in counseling parishioners who come to him troubled in their own way. By the way, Max von Sydow has a small role in this particular movie, and he plays it beautifully. Winter Light. Third movie that I like to recommend to you today is directed and written by the wonderful Russian director Andrei Tarkovsky, who died all too young, unfortunately. And the movie is simply entitled Andrei Rublev. Now, you may not be familiar with the name Rublev, but he is reckoned to be the world's greatest iconographer. And even if you don't recognize his name, you may recognize his most famous icon, which is this. This 1966 movie, made by Tarkovsky, offers us not a biopic of Rublev, but using Rublev as a character, offers us 8 different episodes that might conform to historical passages in Rublev's 15th century life, but more obviously conform to different stages in our journeys toward God as pilgrims. And these journeys are not simple, and they are quite complex and beautifully complex, ranging from desires of the soul and mind to desires of the body and flesh, the importance of beauty in our lives, and the presence beneath the beauty of suffering and decay. I can't recommend this movie more highly. It may be my favorite movie of the 5 that I'm recommending to you today. Andrei Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev. The 4th movie is one that you may very well be familiar with because it won Academy Awards and was quite popular in its day. Came out in 1986, directed by Roland Joffé, and it is entitled The Mission, starring Robert De Niro and Jeremy Irons. It's based upon something that actually occurred in the 18th century when Jesuit missionaries visited Paraguay and established communities in Paraguay among the indigenous Guarani people that not only sought to convert them to Christianity, but took seriously the fact that they have as much inherent dignity as Europeans and treated them accordingly. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie about what happens when we take the Lord's words seriously. But it also, toward the end of the movie, is a bleak reminder of what can happen when that ideal clashes with worldly ambition and power. Because, of course, the settlements that the Jesuits established, both historically and in the movie, are quickly overtaken and destroyed by Portuguese conquistadores, by men who see the Guarani as nothing more than slaves, potential slaves to be exploited for profit. The Mission, a beautiful and haunting film. I don't think I've ever seen De Niro play a better role. And the final film that I want to recommend to you today in this first of 3 parts is simply entitled The Priest. And it was directed by Antonia Bird. Came out in 1994. It stars Linus Roach and Tom Wilkinson and Robert Carlyle. Linus Roach plays a young gay priest who is tortured by his sexual desires and who enters into an illicit relationship with a young man played by Robert Carlyle. So you've got that tension going on in the film. In addition, you've got the tension that arises between a long-established priest, played by Tom Wilkinson, who is a bit of a rebel, who reminds me of a liberation theologian, and who is constantly challenging the institutional church. And then finally, you've got the very grave tension of the young priest being confronted in confession by an adolescent girl who tells him that she's being abused by her father. what's he to do? He can't break the seal of the confessional. And so all of these personal problems become jumbled up. His own sexuality, his censorship of the liberation theologian priest whose lifestyle he disapproves of, and his torture over what to do about what this young adolescent girl has told him. It is a masterful and really disturbing, draining portrait of the complexity and inconsistencies that can beset not just a priest, but any person of faith. You walk away from this film feeling absolutely exhausted, and yet you also come away feeling as if you have been offered an invitation for growth. And that goes for any of the 5 films that I have suggested to you today. Please note that I've done my best not to give you any spoilers so that you can enjoy these films if you haven't seen them as yet. I'll continue this in part 2 and 3, but for now, my friends, thank you for watching. God bless you, and please go to the movies. Bye-bye.